Hey guys, so today we're going to be reviewing a product that I have been questioned about constantly on my Instagram account and even on Facebook. I just keep getting messages and comments, people asking me, hey, does the retro arm straight trigger work with this? Does it work with that? And well, I've had enough. I'm doing a review on it and we're going to compare it in a SpectraFET and then we're going to drop it into a standard Tokyo Marui style trigger contact housing, as well as talk about the product itself. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Now, the retro arm straight trigger itself is a very well machined piece of work. I'm in love with it. It's one of my favorite purchases, to be honest, recently for Airsoft, and I've bought a Chimera recently, so I honestly kind of like this trigger a little more than my Chimera, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna give away my Chimera, so no, you're not buying it. Anyway, the retro arm straight trigger is CNC'd out of a block of 775 aluminum made by Retro Arms. Now, Retro Arms is a new company that just started kind of recently, and they come out of the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia, one of the two. Sorry if I messed that up, but I do know you guys are over in Europe and you make some beautiful parts. And let me just say, for a new company, they're doing a fantastic job. Now, it's just a beautiful trigger. As you can see, it sports two little holes just for design here. And if you haven't already noticed, almost all straight triggers have this kind of design, and I like it, and it's kind of cool. Now, the actual trigger is, like I said, CNC'd out of 775 aluminum, and it has this post here. You can see that. This post, where the trigger actually fits into the gearbox, rotates, and as it rotates, the trigger rotates around it. So it's a very, very smooth trigger pull as a result, and we're going to compare that in a minute. But one of the things I'm going to be doing in this video is I'm going to be showing it in a standard trolley and then in a SpectraFET, because that's one of the biggest gripes about this trigger, is to see if it works in this, if it works in that. So yeah, let's go do that. Now, before we compare to the triggers, before we compare the Retro Arms trigger in a SpectraFET and then in a Tokyo Marui style trigger housing, I wanted to look at the two and show off the two triggers here. I have a GMP standard trigger here for an M4, as you can see, and then the Retro Arm straight trigger. Now, the GMP triggers are actually pretty nice. They're robust, they're strong in my opinion, and I have actually broken JG triggers themselves and haven't broken a GMP trigger. But they're nice, these work well, but the pull on them is nowhere near as smooth, honestly, as it is on this thing. And you can see the size difference as far as width goes and length. They're about the same in length, but width, the Retro Arms is significantly bigger, but I kind of like that. Now, here is the Retro Arms straight trigger inside of a Lonex gearbox shell with a SpectraFET, and it fits very nicely. My only real complaint is that the pin on the SpectraFET is slightly higher than the trigger can reach. I mean, it touches it just fine, but I've noticed that sometimes you pull on it, it'll kind of slip off the button, and that's a little complaint that I have. Maybe others don't experience it, but I have experienced it. When I was shooting my DSG the other day, I noticed that the straight trigger, it pulls very nicely, and there's no problems there. But if you pull it and you pull just barely past where the button kind of stops on it, it can kind of slip off of it, and that just feels weird. Granted, I do not do it on purpose, but it's just kind of weird because it doesn't happen with any other trigger, so I'm not used to that happening. It doesn't happen with a GMP trigger, it doesn't happen with a JG trigger. It just seems to happen with the straight trigger, and I just think their post that is supposed to touch onto the trolley isn't really tall enough, and that's my only real complaint. It's not significant, but it's there. And other than that, it fits very well into the SpectraFET, and it's just fantastic as far as trigger pull goes. There's no weird grind feeling, there's no resistance. You just feel just the trigger pulling back on under your strength. It feels great. Yeah, that's really all I can think of. Another thing that I like about the Retro Arms trigger is that it does fit into shells very well. I've tried it in JG shells, I've tried it in Lonex shells, I've tried it in other shells, and it just fits very nicely. And where the post can actually go up and down, if you have the triggers that have the problem that there's like a flop open, and that's just annoying, because when you have the trigger in the gearbox and you have it installed and you're ready to close it and you put that spring in, sometimes the trigger will just pop out, and that's really really annoying. And the retro arm straight trigger gets rid of that problem, because if that is happening, you can push this post down more, down into the shell, so it holds on to it better and it doesn't pop out. And that's just fantastic. I actually really love that thing. So yeah, it fits really well into the SpectraFet. So here's it working in the SpectraFet. Works just fine. And let's go put it in a Tokyo Marui style trigger contact. Okay, so here we have the retro arm straight trigger installed inside of a standard trigger contact system. Now, first off the bat, it was kind of difficult to get in. Other than that, it's just fine as far as I can tell. We're going to get down to the operational defect right in just a second though. But basically what was difficult to install was the fact that the trigger itself is a little bit wider than other triggers, so that when you put it into it, it doesn't like to go in all the way. And I had to undo the screw and then put it in and then do the screw back in. And it fits just fine now. But that means it's going to be difficult for it to actually jump out on itself. So it's in there and it's staying there, unless I actually want to get it out. Okay, so let's actually pull it and see how it's working. Okay, so the pull seems just fine. There's no irregular behavior really. Now let's check the cutoff. Okay, well, cut off there. Okay, so it's cut off. There's the problem. Okay, so what's happening here is when, and this is the problem that everybody's experiencing with these triggers in standard systems. When you pull the trigger and the cutoff lever comes up and kicks the trolley off on semi, the trolley comes back and the trigger comes back after you let go of it, obviously. And it's supposed to pick up on the lip of the trolley, which is this little thing right here, this little lip. So what's going on here is a trigger where it's a little bit bigger, it doesn't want to catch on that. So what can you do about this? Well, this is actually a pretty easy fix. All you have to do is take a Dremel and check how much you need to remove, and just remove a little bit of the lip. Push it back, in other words, so that it has more room to catch. Now, standard triggers will catch like this. And then it'll pull forward, release, come back, catch on it again, same thing. Well, the retro arm straight trigger, it doesn't come all the way back and it can't catch on it because there's not enough room here on this lip. So basically what you need to do is you just need to shave down a little bit of the lip and push it back this way, so you're creating more room this way. And what that does is it gives you room for the trolley, or not the trolley, the trigger to actually grab on to the trolley. Now that's a very simple modification. All you have to do is take a file or even a Dremel, and keep in mind you do not want to remove too much, because if you remove too much, the trigger won't be able to grab onto it. If you remove too little, you're going to get the same thing that you got right here, where it's just not going to want to reset. Now remember that it's always better to remove too little than too much, because you can always go back and keep making more fine adjustments. I have done this modification before and it works just fine, and it's just very reliable. So there's really no problem in doing it. Alright, so I've got the retro arms straight trigger installed into my DSG with my Lonex shell and my BTC SpectraFet. So here we go. I'm going to show off the trigger and its functionality. Very light pull. Full auto. Then semi. This is it fully reset to fire. Very, very beautiful trigger. And on safety. In conclusion, I'd say that the retro arm straight trigger is a fantastic trigger. It's just such a nice, beautiful piece of work. I'm in love with it, honestly. I'm going to pick up one more for my M16 just because I love it. I think I'm going to go with red. Now the colors come in white, black, red, blue, and yellow. Any of those colors look fantastic. They're all CNC'd out of 775 aluminum, and they're all basically the same thing, just a different color. So that does it for this review, and just so you guys are wondering, you can get this on Brill Armory for the price of $20. I'll see you guys later.